Hey y'all. Clearly I have not accepted that Halloween is over, but let's talk about nonfiction November. So this isn't going to be exactly a TBR video, but it is 10, maybe 11 books that I would like to get to during November, but some that have been on my shelf for a while that I've been meaning to get to, as well as some new books that I'm looking forward to. I think that I will start with my audiobooks first. So the first book that I want to get to / spoiler have already read and for November was Yours Cruelly Elvira, the Cassandra. She even like corrects the pronunciation in the book. Cassandra Peterson memoir about being Elvira, and I think that I will have a full review on it to come. So I want to talk about it here. It's a memoir about her experiences, like starting as like a Las Vegas showgirl, Hollywood memoir, Elvira memoir, the personal stuff behind the scenes. And the audiobook is narrated by her. So those are that was my gateway into audiobooks, was listening to memoirs read by the person who wrote them. And so I was happy to get to that one this month. But I'll talk about that later. Most of my nonfiction reads, I do love nonfiction, and usually like they end up like being higher rated stuff for me. Maybe because I like truly like DNF them if they're not working for me, rather than like hoping the plot will pay off in the future. But I read most of my nonfiction on audiobooks, and so usually that's like the audiobook that I have going. Like usually I read like at least like one nonfiction a month. But the big chunky audiobook that I'm hoping to get through this month, and may have already started, is Drawing Down the Moon by Margot Adler. Drawing Down the Moon is a history of paganism, neo-paganism, druidism. Here's my little witch right here. But like kind of ideas behind modern witchcraft and paganism. And this is really interesting to me as someone who is not religious. Is this a joke to y'all? As someone who's not religious, but is very, very curious about the beliefs of, especially like, I mean, I'm interested in people of all belief systems and like how that works out, but also going in line with this, like polytheistic religions, which is why I think I do appreciate even like learning, you know, that I respect so much monotheistic people, is because I believe that there's, you know, truth behind all belief systems in a way, but also that like my guiding morality to the world is like one of like reciprocity with the world, which goes hand in hand with like my veganism, is like being able to respect your place in the natural world. And so like veganism is a part of that for me, because I just feel like as someone who is a settler to this land, like indigenous people have practiced like reciprocity that involves like eating animals for for thousands of years, but I don't think that that's in the cards for me as a settler to like take more from the land than giving back, which, you know, just like is part of my belief system, that I, care to protect the like biodiversity and biology of like your region. And I don't know, this is a lot of information, but I just feel like there's something that rings true whenever I hear people talk about like witchcraft and paganism, that there is like that bond between ecology and spirituality. That's like something that is appealing to me. Like, I'm not looking to like find a belief system, but I think that it's like something that already kind of aligns with some of the beliefs I have. So I'm curious in learning more, as well as like I think that it's something that's like not something that you learn about without seeking it out, because it's something that's like fairly stigmatized, especially someone who grew up Southern Baptist. It's not something that was ever like taught to me as like a as well respected as like monotheistic religions, and like how that ties into like how polytheism, what I've gotten from this book so far is like an argument against like the opposite of polytheism would sometimes be like fascism and monarchy and capitalism. And so it's just like something that I want to learn about, but it's like a 20-hour audiobook, so that's a chunky one for me. We'll see how many others I get to. I'm definitely gonna read that one this month, but we'll see how many others I'm able to get to after finishing that. Some other audiobooks that I have in the cards for me, hopefully this month, are The Mushroom at the End of the World by Anna Lowenhaupt Tsing, which is about the matsutake mushroom, and that it's like a very sought after mushroom, and all of the different, and it's kind of like tracing like all of the people that are involved in seeking out this mushroom and the uses for it, as like a history of fungi in the natural world in some way. I'm really interested in mushrooms. I was also seeing that the lovely Sean of Pastori Time was posted on Instagram about Entangled Life, I think it's called, which is also like about mushrooms. And honestly, I couldn't read enough nonfiction about mushrooms, so we'll see if I can get to that one this month too. Who knows? And another one that's been on my list for a while is Disfigured by Amanda Leduc, and this one is looking at disability and the representation of disability in fairy tales and literature, which sounds extremely interesting. I may have started it before in ebook, but I think I'm gonna like switch to audiobook just because I feel like really that's my preference. Like, I'm gonna try to get to other means of nonfiction this month, but really my preference is to listen to it on audiobook, that I just, for whatever reason, like I like being talked to about stuff. Another book that I may have already gotten to this month is Suspiria by Alexandra Heller-Nichols, which is a monograph on my favorite film, Suspiria. And it looks at the actual like filmmaking part of Suspiria, as well as like the critical response at that time to the legacy of it, as well as like in that line of the legacy of it, what it's influenced. It also includes like a whole interview with Luciano Tovoli, who's the cinematographer on Suspiria, and like how, you know, the colors and texture of it was achieved, which is so interesting to me, because I mean that's like one of the things that is most appealing to me about Suspiria. And just like whenever it's something that is your favorite movie, and like to just like do a deep dive into it, and it's like, I don't know, it's just a very validating experience. But I'll talk about it more if I do a wrap up. Who knows? I'm not making any promises. And then the last ebook that I have already started this month and will definitely finish this month is Story Mode by my dear friend Trevor Strunk. Trevor is the host of No Cartridge Audio, which I am a co-host of, and Trevor, you know, very kindly sent me an ARC to review his book, my friend's book, and so far I'm loving it, as I expected, because it's like, I got on this podcast because I was already interested in what Trevor was doing, so of course, you know, why wouldn't I? It's also like very interesting whenever you're like the friend of someone who's written a book and you read it and you're like, oh yeah, I knew you were a good writer, but like, you're really a good writer. And to have smart friends. Everyone needs a smart friend. I don't know that I'm that friend to anyone, but there's still time. The next two books, I'm now getting to my physical books. The next two books were sent to me by my friend Jacqueline at 6 Minutes for Me on YouTube and on Instagram, a little bit more consistently on Instagram. But she sent me these books before she moved back to Australia, whenever she was still living in Houston. And they're both Australian literature, Auslit picks. The first one I've already started for this month is No Country Woman by Zoya Patel, a memoir of not belonging, and it's about her experiences as that she moved from Fiji to Australia at like a very young age, and like is also like of Indian heritage as well, and so like her experience, like whenever she's in Fiji, that she doesn't fully feel like Fijian because of like in respect to like the indigenous culture there, as well as not fully fitting in Australia. And then because she feels like she grew up in Australia, like going back, like just like never feeling like in her place. But I'm only like this far in, so more on that to come. But yeah, very interesting so far, and it's been long overdue that I've had this book. But like I said, I usually read my nonfiction on audiobook, so it's just like, and I've been reading like only horror this year, and I'm longing to get back to other stuff too. As you can probably tell, it's like even whenever I'm reading non-horror stuff, it's like I'm still reading like Suspiria and about you know, paganism, stuff that like crops up in horror a lot. Even mushrooms. I feel like mushrooms are a little bit spooky. The next book that I have is volume 2 of Sweatshop Women, which is a collection of prose and poetry written by women from Indigenous, migrant, and refugee backgrounds. Yeah, also from Australia. There's even like some like paintings in here. It's, you know, from a lot of different writers. And so I think that I will probably like these two are what I am privileging as far as like my physical nonfiction reads this month, because I've wanted to get to these for a while and it just hasn't happened yet. But here we are now. The next one is one that I would like to get to. I don't think I'm getting to it this month. The End of Policing by Alex Vitale, which I picked up not to be convinced that we should end policing, but to know what to say. Whenever people are like, oh, but what will we do without police in X, Y, and Z situations? And kind of like seeing, like, I don't really like need to know the reasoning behind, or like need to know the facts of what we would do without police. I just know it's not working. What we have right now is not working. That it doesn't seem reformable. That I don't think it's just like a budget cut, you know, a matter of budget cuts, that we need to like totally rethink the way we're doing things right now. And so it's like, I don't need to know exactly what we're going, you know, like, I don't need to have all of the answers in order to believe that we should have something different. I would rather say like, oh, we need something different, let's brainstorm, and like everyone to just be like on the same page with brainstorming, and rather than like having to be convinced that what we have right now isn't working. Hello, like what's not clicking, y'all? It's not working. As well as prison abolition, I think is like also something else that people have a hard time wrapping their head around. And I read Are Prisons Obsolete by Angela Davis last year and definitely recommend it. I would like to get to this at some point, but like the font's so tiny. I would like to buddy read this with someone, I think. But this is also probably something that I would have like preferred to read on audiobook, but felt very, I think I even got a free ebook of this, but it's just another thing that hasn't happened yet. While we're talking about abolition, another book that I've started multiple times and just like have never finished, and would like to at some point, but I don't know if it's happening this month, is Incarcerated Mothers, Oppression and Resistance. And it's all these different essays from mothers around the world, mostly set in Canada because the editors are Canadian, I believe. But yeah, looking at just the experiences of motherhood. Let me see. Let's look at some of the like an essay, The Effect on the Health and Social Well-Being of Infants and Their Mothers, Love Behind Bars, The Darker Side of Incarcerating Mothers, Care and Respect, Mothering and Relatedness in Multi-Generational Prison Settings, Incarcerated Indigenous Australian Mothers, Maintaining Patriarchal Colonization. It was easier to say I didn't have kids, Mothering, Incarceration, and Relationships with Social and Criminal Justice Policies. Just, you know, about the different complexities of being a mother while incarcerated. Very good what I've read so far, and I guess it technically is one of those things where you could just like read an essay every now and then, but I think probably as a collection as a whole, it's like something that I would want to read from start to finish, and just haven't gotten there yet. I've read the introduction like 10 times. The last two books that I have are both Louisiana reads. Louisiana Legends and Lore by Alan Brown and Haunted Lafayette, Louisiana by Cheré, Dastugue, Coen. Lafayette, obviously, being where I live. And like, I'm just so interested. What are the ghost stories of Lafayette? I didn't grow up here, so it's like, and also people just like don't share ghost stories always. It's I'm not surprised that there's like ghost stories, just because it's like a very Catholic like a very Catholic region, whereas like where I grew up was very Protestant, and like I don't think really believed in like the actual like spiritual world. It's not like being Baptist is not very spiritual. It's more rule based rather than like thinking, you know, I don't know, didn't really think like Satan was a real thing that could come possess you or anything like that, whereas Catholics can believe all kinds of stuff. And yeah, Louisiana Legends and Lore. I don't think this is all necessarily like spooky. A lot of it's in New Orleans, of course, because I mean, New Orleans is a hot spot for all things legendary. But yeah, this goes along with like what I was like saying in a video recently, that I'm interested in maybe trying to write some Louisiana horror, just because I don't really see a lot of it being written outside of New Orleans, and also not seeing it being written by authors who are actually from Louisiana. So those are the reads that I hope to get to this month, but I know that I'm not going to get to all of them, but those are like some of the other things that are on my bookshelf too that I would like to get to soon. If you have any nonfiction recommendations for me that are like similar to these topics, but things that you think maybe like, especially mushroom books, if you have like really good mushroom books, let me know. As well as like on witchcraft. Like I read Witches of America, which I don't remember who wrote that offhand, but it felt kind of like an outsider's perspective and felt a little bit like voyeuristic. Not that I'm, not looking in as an outsider to learning, but it just seemed like more where this author feels more entrenched in the, guiding beliefs. Is that making sense? I don't know. I don't think, I finished my coffee this morning. I'm trying to pull my brains together. I went for like a really like subtle eye look today, so thank you for joining me for the most relaxed video I think I've ever had, because I think we all know spooky people sometimes struggle in the weeks after Halloween, that I don't know, not feeling burned out per se, but just like, feeling very low energy. There's and I feel a little bit burned out on horror, like even just like trying to pick a movie. Like yesterday I was like, do I want to watch a horror movie? It's like, what is the like, wait, that's what I want recommendations for. What are like the actually good, feel good things that you do whenever you're feeling down? Like I wish so badly that I could see the movies Paddington and Paddington 2 for the first time again, because I love that bear. He's so silly. He's so silly. Sharing a lot of like animal videos. That's kind of like what's appealing to me right now. Anyway, thank you for joining me today. And I will talk to y'all again so soon. Bye-bye.